my opinion, Notre Dame's upcoming game against Louisville couldn't come at a better time. Plus, the men's basketball program just landed a commitment from the highest rated prospect in school history. That's all coming right up in today's mailbag.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And happy Friday, everybody. I appreciate you joining me here on Friday, September 27th. And thanks for starting off your weekend by making this your first listen of the day. This show is free and available wherever you get podcasts, plus you can watch on YouTube as well. This is your reminder to please like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, we got another mailbag on the docket today, as we do every Friday during the season. Thanks to everyone who submitted a question this week. And if I didn't answer it today, please keep them coming, because we are doing one every single week during the season. So I promise I will get to yours eventually. But we've got a lot to talk about today, because in segment 3, we've got to talk about the big news around the Notre Dame men's basketball program, because Micah Shrewsbury just landed a commitment from the highest rated recruit in program history, Jalen Harrelson, who lives about 40 minutes from campus. And I'm going to break down why it's such a big pickup and what it means for the future of the program in segment 3. But we begin with the mailbag. And this first question comes from a frequent mailbag submitter at CS Genis. What needs to happen Saturday for the playoff hype train to be back in full force? I think Notre Dame needs to win going away. It has to be an impressive performance. If they squeak by and they're still alive, but they really need an emphatic win to start changing the minds of the general public. And this is why I believe that this Louisville game is happening right at the perfect time, because I've heard some people say, well, you know, maybe Notre Dame would benefit from playing another school like Miami, Ohio, or something like that to really figure things out on the offense. I just don't think that's going to happen at this point. Notre Dame has played their best in big games, especially when their backs are against the wall. And I think they need this game, because even if they dominate another MAC team, is the fan approval really going to change? Because Notre Dame beat Purdue 66-7, and fans were still pissed off because it wasn't a perfect passing outing, and Notre Dame still lost to Northern Illinois. And for the record, I get it. I understand all of the concerns about this team, specifically the offense, after the loss to Northern Illinois. So I'm not being critical of those fans, but I think the only thing that's going to change the minds of those people who are so down on this team, the quarterback, the staff, all of that stuff, is a big win over a ranked opponent. And that's exactly the opportunity that Notre Dame has on Saturday. So if they end up beating them by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, if Leonard looks like a competent passer and continues to do work with his legs, that's certainly going to help out. If Jaden Greathouse and Mitchell Evans have big games, that's going to be big for the playoff hype train. But to me, Notre Dame really needs strong performances from their stars on the defensive line, Howard Cross and Riley Mills. Those guys got to play like stars for Notre Dame to win this game. And up to this point in the season, they just have not done it on a consistent basis. And look, I'm going to be happy no matter what if they win, because as I've said before on the podcast this week, this game has a lot of personal value to me, just being that I'm from Louisville. But honestly, any win is going to make me happy. But a win that Notre Dame is dominant in, if they come out ready to go and they don't take their foot off the gas, that is going to make me believe in this team in a way that I wasn't really sure was possible a couple weeks ago after that loss to Northern Illinois. So there's a lot at stake in this game for sure. If they end up losing, things are going to get really, really bad, but that's not why you're here today, right? Let's be a little bit optimistic. Let's talk about the opportunity at hand. What is the line from the movie Miracle? Great moments are born from great opportunity. Well, Notre Dame has a great opportunity on Saturday. Let's see what they do with it. Okay, next question. At Michael McG7, the Notre Dame Stadium issue has come up quite a bit this week on the pod. How can Notre Dame solve the fan/crowd problem we have seen recently? What steps can actually be taken, and who is it on to take them? Well, one thing that Notre Dame could do to help out the crowd is not lose to Northern Illinois in the home opener, because, you know, we can be critical of the fans and the environment in the Notre Dame Stadium, but like, if Notre Dame doesn't lose that game, I imagine the vibe is a lot different in the crowd over the course of the past 2 games. And then when they come out flat against Miami, Ohio in the first home game after that pathetic performance against NIU, it's not really going to inspire a ton of confidence and a ton of excitement from the home crowd. And I'm not giving the people who are like, hey, down in front, sit down, stop cheering, I'm certainly not giving them a pass. And I wasn't at the first 2 games, but this is something that I have heard repeatedly, and it sounds like there's just been a hangover from that Northern Illinois game, and I get it. When you play two poor teams and you struggle against them, it's hard to get the crowd riled up. But that's another reason why this Louisville game is so important, because I do think the crowd's going to get going. I think that the Irish wear green thing really does have an impact on the crowd. I think the fact that it's a ranked opponent, especially one that embarrassed Notre Dame last year, there's a revenge factor in play. And Notre Dame fans, for all the criticism that there is, and I think a lot of it is justified, like, they show out in big games. I was at the Ohio State game last year. It was ear-piercingly loud on that final drive. The fact that Ohio State scored there and McCord did it as the quarterback for Ohio State is really crazy, because I've been to a lot of Notre Dame games. Very fortunate to be able to go to so many games, but I don't think I have ever heard it as loud as it was on that final drive, and really after that 4th and 1 stop that Notre Dame made to get the ball back one more time. So it's possible, and I think that the steps that the university took before that game, Jack Swarbrick had a very well orchestrated plan to make sure that it wasn't going to be a sea of red again. They made sure that there was incentives for fans to not sell their tickets, to go into the game, to get loud, to do all that. And I thought it was very well executed, but Ohio State doesn't come into town every weekend. And there is just going to be a drop-off between Northern Illinois and an Ohio State game. Like, it's just not going to be the same. And for the record, like, we always look at things through the microscope of Notre Dame, which is obvious, right? We're all fans of this team. We care so much about them. But, like, look around college football. A lot of big-time programs have issues with attendance and crowds and things like that. Like, at least Notre Dame fans are going to the games. LSU, they were like 50-50 last week. And when you think of LSU, you think of one of the most rabid fan bases in all of college football. Now, in their defense, it was unbelievably hot at the stadium, and if you play at 3:30, which they normally don't do for this exact reason, it is literally a safety hazard because of the way that the sun sits on half of the crowd. Like, it's actually a pretty funny picture. I would encourage you to go look it up if you haven't seen it. You look at Tiger Stadium, and all of the seats that are in the sun are pretty much empty, and then in the shade, people are just like packed in there like sardines so that they can enjoy the game. Alabama has struggled with attendance issues. Not every school, but you kind of get my point. I think this is a bigger problem that is affecting all of college football, but Notre Dame's is just a little bit different in the sense that people are going to the games, they just aren't quite as invested, and that is something that I'm not sure you can ever change entirely just because of the nature of the Notre Dame fan base, the alums. Some Notre Dame alums, I don't think I'm breaking news here, can be a little bit snobby. That's not rude. That's the truth. There are some fans who have a sense of entitlement. Not everyone, not every alum. I'm not trying to group everyone in, but there are some people who go to the games who expect the environment to be a certain way, and I think that Notre Dame has taken steps to push those people out to some degree because they want to have a home field advantage, and if you have a bunch of fans like that, you're not really going to have one, but you can't, like, get rid of those people entirely. They pay for the tickets too. So I think that Notre Dame has taken steps, but really the product on the field is a big reason why the crowd has sucked so much the past two games. But I'm hopeful about Saturday. I'll be there. I'll be loud. I'll be cheering my ass off. So I'll be doing my part. Okay, next one. Dallas Dale MD. Do we expect the student section to wear green, or do you think they'll wear the mustard color shirt and throw off the vibe? And then we're going to group in another question with this one. At Michael Bonello, if the captains decide to wear green, how could they seriously decide that after NIU? All right, let's get to Dallas Dale's question first. So he's asking about the shirt, right? Is the student section going to wear the shirt, or are they going to wear green? I bet the freshmen wear the shirt. And honestly, it's very funny because when I was growing up as a kid, like, you'd hear about the shirt and how every year the students come out with a new one. And I remember when I was a kid, I would collect them. I think I had every single shirt for over a decade plus. And then you get to Notre Dame, and then your freshman year, your first game, you wear the shirt in the stadium, and then you're at the tailgates, and all your other freshman buddies are all wearing the shirt too. But the sophomores, the juniors, the seniors, they're not wearing the shirt. As a matter of fact, they're probably making fun of the freshmen for wearing the shirt. I don't know how that information really hasn't leaked out to the general public, that really the only people that wear the shirt in the game are freshmen. But when you look at it on the broadcast and you see, like, the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior sections, it's pretty clear. It's mostly freshmen who are wearing the shirt. So they'll probably wear it on Saturday, although maybe by this point, by game 3, they figured out, oh, maybe, I guess, are we losers? I mean, I'm not saying anyone's a loser for what they wear to the game, but I'm guessing that most of the students are going to wear green, just like the players, because it was announced on Thursday that Notre Dame will wear green jerseys. I'm hearing that they will wear green top and then the white pants that they wore against Clemson last season. So It didn't work out in the all green. It didn't work out in the all white. Maybe two negatives equal a positive in this case when Notre Dame wears green on white. But let's get to Bonello's question. Look, man, like, how could they seriously decide that after NIU? Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really understand the correlation between losing to NIU and what color jersey you wear. Like, should they punish themselves by wearing the standard home uniform? And to be clear, I prefer the navy jersey and the gold pants. Like, I would much rather them wear the normal uniforms, but I just don't understand that, like, what, if you lose a game, then you aren't allowed to wear an alternate uniform in an Irish wear green game that the school and the university and the marketing team have advertised for months now? Like, if this is the Irish wear green game, then the team should probably wear green. And that decision about the crowd wearing green was made well before the NIU game. So to me, it would have been kind of weird if they didn't wear green, which is why I was so surprised that Marcus Freeman even left that up for debate at one point earlier in the week. But look, if you don't want them to wear green because the NIU game, I guess I don't entirely blame you. If you want all of their focus to be on the game and not the uniforms, like, I guess that is a good theory in practice, but I don't really see much of a correlation between the two. And you know what? If they win in the green and white, no one is going to care about the uniforms. Okay, coming up next, what actually goes down in the film room with these Notre Dame football players? Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Next one here, at Drew Brennan 77. Walk us through how a player reviews film from their games. For example, as many people have pointed out, Riley Leonard is missing seeing open receivers down the field. Do the coaches show him that clip from a variety of angles and showcase to him how he should be using his eyes in those situations? Always been curious how this all works. Okay, this is a great question from Drew. He actually asked this before the last mailbag, and I didn't want to give him an answer because I was not in those rooms. I did not play football at Notre Dame, and I don't think that my experience playing high school football and our film study sessions were quite as productive as what the Notre Dame players experienced with this coaching staff. So I asked a couple former players that I know, try to get some insight, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to talk to anyone who played during the Marcus Freeman era when he was the head coach, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of what it looks like because I don't think there's going to be too much change in terms of like the actual film sessions, how those operate, because one of them played for Mike Denbrock as well. So I am imagining there's some similarities here. The bulk of the film that these guys watch is just with their position unit. Sometimes they'll watch film with like the entire offense or the entire defense. Rarely is it the entire team. And the reason for this is because the NCAA permits such a limited amount of time that these guys have to be together with the coaching staff and things like that throughout the week. So most of that time is going to be spent on practice, but the players do watch film with their coaches, specifically their position coaches. And then part of the responsibility is on the players to watch more film of themselves. So here's how it's broken down. Early on in the week, think like Sunday, Monday, you rewatch every play from the previous game on your side of the ball, and you go over every single thing that each player in that group did right or wrong. Okay, so it's very focused. If you're in the wide receiver room, you're just going to be watching all of the offensive plays. The receiver coach is going to be there, and they're going to go through all the plays. They know the play call. Obviously, they know exactly what you're supposed to do. They can see the defense, and if you had poor technique, if you made a decision on an option route that you shouldn't have based on what the coverage was showing you, that is what they are going to go over in those film rooms. Now, I imagine for the quarterback, it's a little bit different because there's a lot more that goes into every play. They've got to make decisions pre-snap, post-snap, and then you have to actually watch how are they playing the quarterback position. What's their technique like? The fundamentals. Are they following all of those rules? Things like that. Then the next day, they watch film of the opponent on Tuesday. So now you're into game plan mode. The game plan is pretty much set. You're focusing on the other team. You're focusing on the position that you're going to be going up against. So if you're a running back, you're probably looking at D-line linebackers, right? You're trying to get a sense of what are they doing? What are they showing? How do they react to different looks? If a running back goes this way in this coverage. So you're going over all those things, and you're basically trying to predict, okay, this is what our game plan is going to look like. What plays have other teams shown against this look or this defense that are somewhat similar to what we are going to do? So then that way you can try to predict how they will cover it. So a lot of it is very focused on the positions and what they're going to be going up against in the game. There's also just a lot of time where the players have to watch more film on their own. That comes with like watching practice, things like that, because again, they have a limited amount of time. And as for like the different angles and things like that, I think it's mostly the all-22 camera, which is behind the line of scrimmage. So there's two main all-22 views. There's usually one in the end zone where it's like behind the players. So that's a little bit closer to an actual point of view in the game. But then you have one high above. It looks like the sky cam where you can see the entire field, but it looks more like the broadcast than it does a player's point of view. Maybe they look at a little bit more for some specific situations, but I think that's really all you need to see because that way you can see everything that's on the field. But getting back to Leonard, like I promise you, he is seeing these mistakes on film and he's being coached. But it's one thing when you see like that screenshot that was going around during the Purdue game when Jeremiah Love was wide open down the field and Riley Leonard just tucked the ball and ran it. Like stuff like that annoys me because you don't know the context of the situation. You don't know the reads. You don't know was Jeremiah Love even supposed to be there? Was the quarterback supposed to be looking there? Sometimes those are correct, right? I'm not saying that every screenshot online is incorrect, but I think that you just assume because you see one thing on the television broadcast that all of a sudden the quarterback made the wrong decision is not always true. There's so much more that goes into it, and that's why the coaches work so hard together to understand, okay, what was the call? What were all the progressions here? What should they have done? Because the coaching staff is going to be on the same page. They all have to meet on Sunday before the players. And then so when the coaches are actually meeting with the players, like that message is being sent down from Marcus Freeman, the coordinators all the way down, position coaches, analysts, GAs. And that's really the main thing. But you'd be surprised, like, what is actually mandatory during a given week is really not that much because of NCAA rules, but then it's on the players to watch film and study this stuff on their own. And I think that especially guys like Riley Leonard or Ian Book in his fifth year, they had a lot more time because they weren't students as well. So it's a lot on any given week for a player to do. And what these guys have to do every single play is incredibly difficult. So look, mistakes are going to happen. That's just the way it is, even though you can go back and watch them. All right, next one. Nathan Litwiller. Man, I hope I said that right. What would it take to see Steve Angeli in this game outside of a Riley Leonard injury? Gotten a lot of questions like this over the past few weeks. Okay. Imagine the first three drives against Miami. Think back and how terrible that looked and how unenjoyable that was to watch. So if Notre Dame does that again, the first three drives against Louisville, and then maybe add one or two more and add a touchdown or two by Louisville, that's what needs to happen for Leonard to be pulled. Do you really want that? Because I don't. I don't think anyone wants that. Maybe there are some real diehard Steve Angeli stands out there who would rather have Notre Dame lose to prove a point about Steve Angeli so that he can come in and at least try to save the day. I don't get those people. I just want Notre Dame to put the best players out there and win the game. I understand that fans want to see Steve Angeli, but especially in this game, Leonard's legs are probably going to be the difference. Louisville has been susceptible to quarterback run plays. They gave up 50-plus yards to Haynes King, the quarterback of Georgia Tech. They gave up over 100 rushing yards to the quarterback of Jacksonville State. And even though they're going to be game planning a lot to stop Riley Leonard, when you have Love, Leonard, and Price all in the backfield, sometimes all at once, that's a lot for a defense to deal with. And even though I understand all the points made about Steve Angeli, he has looked like a much better passer than Riley Leonard this year. I am not disputing that. And as I've said a million times before on this podcast, they absolutely should have pulled Riley Leonard in the second half of the NIU game because he was hurt. Steve Angeli absolutely could have won that game if given the opportunity, but assuming that Riley Leonard is healthy and ready to go, I think he gives this offense the best chance to move the ball. It's not always going to be pretty. He's not always going to be accurate, but I do think that he is the right guy, especially going up against a Louisville defensive line who we know can get after it. Ashton Gelati and pretty much everyone on that entire offensive or defensive line can get after the quarterback. And Steve Angeli got crushed 3 times against Purdue. He was not able to move and avoid defenders. Like, yes, he did have a nice run on that quarterback power play, but he also just did not look very mobile in the pocket and was not able to avoid defenders. Riley Leonard is going to have to avoid some defenders in this game because the offensive line is still developing. Louisville is going to bring a lot of pressure. So from that standpoint, he gives you more options, and I think that in this game especially, they really need Riley Leonard to make some legit progress. And it wasn't always pretty in that Miami-Ohio game, but in the second half when he started throwing the ball deep and even in the intermediate game, he was a lot better then than he had been previously, and I do think that's a real step forward for him and this Notre Dame offense. Okay, one more. At Irish Bronco 2010, is Louisville or USC a harder game? Also, do you have an update on Deuce Knight? Auburn is trash. That's what Irish Bronco said, not me, although I wouldn't really dispute the Auburn part. Okay, right now, I think I would still say USC is the tougher game because we have seen USC play two tough teams. They beat LSU, which is a very impressive win, in a neutral site that really wasn't even a neutral site because there are more LSU fans at that game than USC. I heard it was like 70-30 LSU-USC. The fact that USC won that game is a pretty big deal. LSU's offense can really move the ball. Yes, they have issues on defense, but that was a very impressive win by USC. They lost on the road to Michigan in a game where Michigan just decided, hey, we're going to go back in time 100 years and not throw the forward pass, and yet they still won because they dominated USC at the line of scrimmage. So that wasn't a great loss, but still, USC came back in that game. They could have won on the road in the Big House, difficult environment. So even though they lost, I was pretty impressed by what USC was able to do. Louisville could end up being a harder game, but based on what we've seen so far, they just haven't played anybody, right? Like, what's the line from Paul Feinbaum's show? Louisville ain't played nobody, Paul. They haven't. They beat Austin Peay, an FCS school, Jacksonville State, who's been an FBS school for like under a decade, and then they beat up on a Georgia Tech team who at one point we all thought was a ranked team, pretty damn good, and then we were like, oh, actually, Florida State is one of the worst teams in college football. So the luster on that win has certainly gone away a little bit. So I could be wrong about this, but I do think that USC, with what they have on offense, the playmakers and all that, and the improvements they have made on defense, that will be a tougher game. Plus, it's at USC at the end of the season. Louisville is a home game, and I think they're still kind of figuring things out. Also, they're dealing with a bunch of injuries. Their best wide receiver, Colin Lacey, is going to maybe try to play, but he's out. Quincy Riley, their best corner, might be out as well. They also are without their top running back. So Louisville is a gettable game. Notre Dame should win this game, and I think for all of these reasons, that is why USC is a harder game to win than Louisville. As for Deuce Knight, yeah, I haven't really talked a lot about him on the show, and that's planned for sure. I made that conscious decision because I talked about him so much in the summer when there's really nothing else to talk about other than recruiting. And look, he visits Auburn every weekend. He has silently committed to Auburn. I don't think I'm breaking any news there, but he has not publicly announced that he's committed to Auburn. I think he's still in constant communication with the Notre Dame staff. I would say that Notre Dame is working from behind. Most people who are really in tune with his recruitment in the recruiting world still think that Deuce Knight will end up at Auburn. But at this point, like, I don't even know. And I don't even really care that much because even if he commits to Notre Dame and signs the dotted line, every single day, fans are going to be like, is he going to transfer? Is he going to transfer? Is he going to transfer? And like, that's not really a fun topic. I understand he's a 5-star quarterback. He could end up being really good in college. He could end up being a bust. A lot of 5-stars end up being busts in college. That's just the reality of the situation. Do I want him to commit to Notre Dame and end up playing quarterback for Notre Dame? Sure. But I'm not going to go over every single visit that he goes on to Auburn because until he announces publicly that he's committed to Auburn, like, nothing has really changed over the course of the past few weeks. And I just think that this saga has not been very fun to follow or talk about. So when there's actual things to report, I will report it on this show. But until then, I'm just going to kind of keep quiet about the Deuce Knight situation because it's not really worth it. It's not good content, in my opinion. Okay. That's it for the mailbag. When we come back, we're going to break down why Jalen Harrelson's commitment is so important to the men's basketball program and why it could change the trajectory of the team's future. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And if you want a suggestion for that first $5 bet, I've got one for you. So if you've been listening to the show all week, you know that I've been on Giants plus 5.5. I gave out a 4-leg same game parlay, anytime touchdown scores in the Thursday night game between the Cowboys and the Giants. And even though you will be hearing this on a Friday, I've got a secret. I'm actually recording this on Thursday before the game. So I don't know if that hit or not, but we're going to pretend that it did. And we're going to give out another winner on this show. I am taking Bengals minus 4.5 on the road against the Panthers. Look, the Bengals have to win. They're 0-3. They have too much talent. This team was considered a Super Bowl contender going in the season. They've had some weird losses. They need to win this game. even though it's on the road and even though it's against the Panthers and the spread isn't that big and it feels like a tricky line, I feel like the Bengals come up, get ready for this game. They get a win, much needed, and they're going to cover that 4.5. If you want to bet more, just visit FanDuel.com today. All right, let's talk some hoops. It has been a minute, but man, I am excited to talk about Micah Shrewsbury's squad because he just landed the highest rated recruit in the history of Notre Dame men's basketball. Let me say that again. Micah Shrewsbury just landed the highest rated recruit in the history of Notre Dame men's basketball. There is the obvious caveat that recruiting rankings have not been around forever, but since their inception a few decades ago, Harrelson is the top-rated guy to ever commit to the Irish, and this is a massive deal. This could change the trajectory of the program. There are so many just huge implications from this one decision, and let's assume for now that he ends up signing the dotted line and ends up actually attending Notre Dame. This is a massive win from Micah Shrewsbury, and it's one of the reasons why you went out and you paid that money to get a basketball coach like this because, look, Mike Brey was able to land some recruits, Demetrius Jackson, Blake Wesley, but Jalen Harrelson could be like a program changer. Okay, I'm not predicting he's going to be the best player in Notre Dame history, but I feel it's safe to say that this is the type of commitment that could change the trajectory of this program. Let's dive into Harrelson's profile. He's a 6'7" wing. He's 210 pounds. He is the number 13 player overall in his class, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. He attends La Lumiere School in LaPorte, Indiana. I believe his family is from Fishers, Indiana, and his school is about 40 minutes from Notre Dame's campus, so he's a local kid. And when Micah Shrewsbury was hired, the one thing that I talked about when I had Mark Titus from Barstool Sports on the show, who's very in tune with Shrewsbury and college basketball, the one thing that we talked about over and over again was how he was an Indiana guy, he understood the importance of high school basketball in Indiana, and he wanted to make Notre Dame a place where Indiana high school kids would stay. And Harrelson is a perfect example of that coming to fruition. Like, he's added other Indiana guys in the past, but not a player of Harrelson's caliber. And the fact that he was located just 40 minutes away and he was able to get that done over Michigan State and Indiana, two historically great basketball programs, for him to commit to Notre Dame over those two schools is just a massive, massive win for Shrewsbury. Let's dive into the profile here. This is from Adam Finkelstein, the director of scouting for 24/7 Sports. He had some really high praise for Harrelson. So I want to read a couple excerpts from his report that I thought were noteworthy. Number one, quote, Harrelson is a playmaking big wing and even a jumbo initiator who combines terrific perimeter size, strength, and measurables along with the ability to create for himself and others. Another excerpt, quote, offensively, he's most comfortable with the ball in his hands. He loves to grab and go off the defensive glass where he can both get downhill and pass off the dribble. As for his weakness, his shooting remains the key offensive variable moving forward. He's historically been inconsistent and sometimes reluctant to shoot, only made 24% of his three-point attempts in EYBL, end quote. When you watch his highlights, it's pretty clear that this dude has got a natural ability to him that, frankly, Notre Dame doesn't normally get. He's a freak athlete. He's got the size, and he's just a great basketball player. Like, when he's running the floor, he's not just beating everyone with his athleticism. Like, he actually has some real skill to his game. So he's going to come to Notre Dame and make an instant impact. You add in his size and his athletic ability, and you realize this is a rare talent to come through the program. The shooting is a concern, I will admit, especially when Marcus Burton, who is sort of like the main scorer for this Notre Dame team, can't really shoot either. Maybe he'll develop that in a couple years when these two will be playing together. But if you've got a guy who is as big as Harrelson and he can get to the basket at will, and while he's driving, he can create plays for others, it doesn't really matter that he can't shoot as well, because as long as he's getting other guys opportunities because the defense is so focused on him, it's just a win-win all around. And trust me, Notre Dame has other guys who can shoot. So that actually leads me to my next point about what this means for the future of the program. Because does this change what the Notre Dame men's basketball program is going to do this upcoming season? No. It's still probably going to be a pretty rough year. I'm not expecting anything like last year. I expect this group to improve significantly. I'm hoping they finish like 500 in the ACC, so better than 500 overall. Probably going to be a team on the bubble of the NCAA tournament all year. Maybe they get a couple big wins, sneak in there in one of those last floor spots, but they just were not talented enough last year, and I don't think they did enough in the transfer portal to really like accelerate their development that much. But the following year, when Harrelson will be a true freshman, that team could be something, because Notre Dame also picked up a big-time commit in the class of 2025 earlier in the week, Brady Kohler, another wing from Indiana. Kohler is a four-star, 114th ranked player overall in the class. He has a ton of talent and as well, and maybe maybe by the time that you're listening to this, Ryder Frost, who is another very, very talented recruit in this class, could have already committed to Notre Dame because he's going to make his decision on Friday, and Notre Dame appears to be in a great, great spot. So if they have Harrelson, Kohler, and Frost, that is a really, really talented recruiting class for Notre Dame men's basketball. And is Notre Dame going to win on freshmen alone? Absolutely not. They need Marcus Burton to stick around. They need him to continue to develop. They need Braden Shrewsbury to stick around and continue to develop. They need Sir Muhammad to be a hit in a big way, and he needs to be around in that second season. Same with Cole Serta. But those are a bunch of different options. Like if one doesn't work out perfectly as planned, like there's still a bunch of other guys in this group who could develop and become really, really good players. The one thing that just jumps out to me is Micah Shrewsbury and just actually winning these battles in Indiana. It's so refreshing to see. And look, I loved Mike Brey. I adore him. I think he is just one of the funniest people ever. And there was a lot of really fun times with Mike Brey, but this program really needed a change. They needed a fresh start. Micah Shrewsbury has provided that, and I understand that last year it was gross. It was not always fun to watch, but at the end of the year, they got on that run at the end of the regular season. You could see it, right? You could actually see tangible signs of improvement, of development, that this team was coming together and they had a bright future. And now they're picking up guys on the recruiting trail who they normally would not get. And that is after a pretty terrible season. So, imagine what they could do when they win a few games. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but the ability to land these prospects when you're not doing anything that would excite a 5-star recruit. And then you think about, okay, well, what if this team starts winning? What if they start making a couple runs in the NCAA tournament? And you got a coach in Micah Shrewsbury who is a dog on the recruiting trail, who has the ability to land these 5-star guys. That's when you can start picturing a much, much better Notre Dame men's basketball program, and one that could be consistently good, right? You're not talking about lightning in a bottle and they just have a few good years, couple Elite Eight runs, and that's that. I'm talking about sustained quality play from the basketball program. They continue to develop. And also, one big thing, I can't believe it took me this long to mention it, Notre Dame was willing to throw out some NIL money for this one. Shocker. 5-star basketball player committed because of NIL. It's not the only thing. I think that Micah Shrewsbury is a huge reason why that he committed. Also, the fact that Kohler plays basketball. He played AAU with Brad Stevens' kid, who's on the team. There's a lot of connections there with the NBA as well, so that makes sense. But look, Notre Dame is not getting Harrelson if they don't dish out some big-time NIL. In the past, I'm not sure that Notre Dame would have been able to do that in basketball. But guess what? Now they're doing it. They're playing the game, and it's already paying dividends. And I'm so excited about the future of this men's basketball program. I have been saying since the moment that Notre Dame hired Micah Shrewsbury, buy all the stock you can. Just kind of put your blinders on for the first couple of years in the on-court stuff because it's not always going to be pretty. Invest in the future. Invest in Micah Shrewsbury. And so far, it looks like a great pick. All right, that is going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish first listen of the day. I will not be able to do a post-game reaction show immediately after the Louisville game because I'm going to be there. And I'm hoping to get the post-game show up on Sunday night because I got to fly back to LA. And then once I'm back and I have a chance to record, I'll try to do that as quickly as possible. So be on the lookout for that. The best way to never miss an episode is to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Enjoy the game tomorrow. I have a good feeling about this one, but no matter what happens, we can celebrate or we can stew together next week. I'll see you then. Go Irish.